Hello there, and welcome to today's episode of the EdTech Podcast. My name is Monica Burns, and I am so glad that you're here to join me today. If you want to make the most of education technology, aka EdTech, well, you are in the right place. My goal has always been to help make EdTech easier and give you ideas you can try yourself, share with a colleague, or bookmark for later in the school year. Every Tuesday here on the EdTech Podcast, you'll hear stories from my time in the classroom, the work I do now with schools and districts, and my travels to different EdTech events. Get ready for solo episodes where I share some quick tips and stories, and interviews full of practical ideas and stories from new guests each month. If we mention something you'd like to check out, make sure to click the link. You'll find it in the episode description or the summary area where you're listening to this podcast, or you can find every episode and all of the resources we mention by going to classtechtips.com/podcast, or by going to classtechtips.com and just clicking on the EdTech Podcast button at the top of the page. This episode is sponsored by Color Bliss. Need a calm, creative activity that actually ties into your lesson plan? Color Bliss lets you turn photos or ideas into printable coloring pages, perfect for book scenes, science units, or class memories. It takes less than a minute, and for back to school, you can get half off your first month. Head to colorbliss.com/easyedtech to try it out. No credit card required. This week's episode is titled Make a Custom Reader's Theater with AI. Now, we're going to look at ways to incorporate a reader's theater into your classroom activities and the ways that it can transform how kids engage with content really throughout different grade levels, throughout different subject areas, you name it. This is a medium that I always loved as a classroom teacher. And if you haven't used readers' theaters before, or you're thinking that it might be way too ELA or way too theatrical, I'm hoping to change your mind a little bit. We're going to go into answering that question, what is a reader's theater, and some strategies for creating your own with AI. So we'll go through the steps on how to make your own customized reading selections that you can use really in any content area. So if you've joined me for a webinar, workshop, or maybe even a keynote this year, you know that I love to share favorite prompts that you can use with different chatbots. I even have a free ebook and some free resources on the blog, I'll link out to them too, that take you through some time-saving prompts for educators. There's just so many different directions you can go in when you are creating something with the help of AI, including a chatbot. And today we're going to focus just on one of these areas, which are readers' theater activities. So a reader's theater is an instructional activity where kids read a script with a partner or in a small group. The focus is really on reading aloud with expression. So instead of using costumes or props, even though that can be plenty of fun, the emphasis here is actually on voice and fluency. Kids don't need to memorize lines like they're doing a traditional play performance, but they've got the script right in front of them as they read. It's an interactive activity that can boost comprehension, boost speaking and listening skills, and it can be a lot of fun and just a low stakes activity for students. They don't have to perform in front of anyone. They could sit on the rug, they could sit on their desk, they can sit in the hallway, like whatever you do, part of your routine. Now, readers' theaters are not brand new. They're not my idea. They're not something that has to do with AI. They're a popular strategy to promote fluency. You've probably seen them, particularly in upper elementary classrooms there. They get a lot of traction, but they don't just live there. You might see them in a middle school environment. You might use them even in early elementary or in high school too. There are plenty of places to go that have ready-made scripts. But one thing I found as a teacher, kind of like looking for perfect guided reading resources, right, is that it can be a bit of a struggle and a time-consuming task to find something that is going to work for a group. Because for a reader's theater, we want something that has to do with content. We want it to have to do with student interest. We want it to be at an independent or instructional level, depending on our goals for student readers. And we want it to be of the right length, the right number of roles. There's a lot of things that you're kind of looking for that make it sometimes challenging to use just a generic one that you found someplace. Maybe it'll get you 70% of the way there in terms of accomplishing your goals. So for example, maybe in a science classroom, you want a script that explores a complex process like photosynthesis, and you want your ninth graders to read aloud a script that brings this concept to life. Or in a social studies classroom, a reader's theater could help kids explore an historical event as they take on the role of different historical figures. Maybe in a math classroom, you have a reader's theater that unpacks different problem-solving scenarios or makes an authentic connection to the content kids are learning. So if you want to find the perfect one, it might be tricky with a Google search. So this is where artificial intelligence comes into play, specifically the use of a chatbot, whether that's ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Copilot, you name it. You can use a chatbot to create some pretty fantastic content. Again, maybe not 100% of the way there, but instead of 70% and the time it took you to find that pre-made resource, this is going to be a lot speedier and might get you 80 or 90% towards your goal. So here's a few basic steps to try out. First, set your purpose. Decide the goal of your reader's theater. Do you want to reinforce comprehension, discuss a historical event, solve a math problem? This is where you set your clear objective, and that's going to help guide this script writing process as we move into the next step, which is craft your prompt. So you can develop a detailed prompt to put in the chatbot, or you could even use voice to text and kind of explain the scenario as you dictate for it. So you might say, create a reader's theater script for elementary students that explains the water cycle. Include roles for the sun, water vapor, rain, and snow. And that might be enough to help you get where you're going. Of course, you could add in extra things that you want, like a standard or length or anything like that, but that's your essential getting started prompt. Then you'll review the output. Once the chatbot generates a script, you're going to read through it and make sure it meets your purpose and objectives, that it's age appropriate, and you can add maybe a refinement or additional prompt to get a version that's a bit stronger and closer to your goals. For example, you might try, add these vocab words, and then you pop in a list of a couple extra vocab words you want it to include. Then you're going to tweak and make changes. So copy the script into a space that makes it easy to edit. Maybe it's Google Docs, or if you're using Gemini, you'll see that open up in Docs button. Then you can edit the script to make sure it's the best fit for your classroom or to emphasize or expand on certain parts. You could even highlight vocab words or modify the font or add in another colleague as a collaborator. Then, once you're ready to go, you can share this with students. Maybe you give it to them on paper, printing it out, digitally sharing the link, maybe save it as a PDF, right? You could do it in lots of different ways. So there you have it with our steps, right? Set your purpose, craft your prompt, review the output, tweak and make changes, and then share with students. So I gave you that pretty simple starter prompt, but let's get a little deeper here. Here's a couple more examples that you might want to try. I'm going to read them aloud for you. You, of course, can access the transcript from this episode on the show notes page, and I'll link out to a blog post that has some of these too, so that you have them in text format. So totally up to you. Of course, if you're listening at your desk, you might jot them down, or you might take a look at the timestamp and say, oh, that one that Monica said at 9 minutes and 45 seconds is going to be the perfect one I want to come back to tomorrow. So use whatever podcast listening strategy is best for you. All right, here's a couple examples. Develop a reader's theater script for students in 4th grade, focusing on the historical event of the Boston Tea Party. Include key figures, important dates, and critical outcomes to help kids understand the significance of this event in history. So I put in some of my hopes, a little bit about my group, and of course, my big goal. Generate a reader's theater script aimed at 9th grade students to explore the concept of renewable energy sources. Include characters representing solar, wind, hydro, and geothermal energy, discussing the benefits and challenges. All right, here's another math example. Craft a reader's theater script for 5th grade students that turns the mathematical concept of ratios into a story. Use characters or items as symbols for mathematical elements to clarify all the processes that are involved. So that's just a couple examples that are very content specific. If you're doing something that's going to help students maybe grow in other communication skills, you could say, make a reader's theater script for 3rd grade students that demonstrates how to solve a conflict using peaceful negotiation and empathy. Include a scenario with a common student conflict and show possible solutions through the characters' actions and discussions. So plenty of directions you could go in with any of these things where we're using AI as a tool. It's your expertise. It's your understanding of content, of what students need, of your group of students that are really going to help you craft a prompt or give a task that gets you a fantastic final product. So if you're going to try out reader's theater in your classrooms this year, or suggest this as an AI-powered strategy for a teacher you support, keep me in the loop. Let me know what's working for you. On Mondays, I send out my free weekly newsletter. You can sign up by just going to my website, classtechtips.com/newsletter. And then when you respond to any of those, they go straight to my inbox. I see every question, every suggestion, every hello. Have you seen this yet, Monica message? So feel free to let me know how this is working for you, or maybe a great story or prompt that you could share on an episode of the podcast in the future. So let's make this EdTech easy with a few key points from today's episode. Clearly outline learning targets for the reader's theater before crafting your prompt. Include the subject, grade level, characters, and learning objectives when using a chatbot. Review the chatbot generated script and tweak it to align with your goals and student needs before sharing. Remember, you can find the show notes and full list of resources from today's episode by heading to easyedtechpodcast.com. A big thank you to our sponsor, Color Bliss. Whether you're creating engagement during read aloud time, turning student photos into printable keepsakes, or need a calm activity for early finishers, Color Bliss helps you make custom coloring pages in seconds. Try it free and get 50% off your first month at colorbliss.com/easyedtech, just in time for back to school. Thank you for listening to this new episode of the Easy EdTech Podcast. I love creating new episodes for you each week, but I could use a bit of help spreading the word about the podcast. Can you leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app? Spotify will let you tap on the stars, and Apple Podcasts will let you tap on the stars and leave a 1 or 2 sentence review. Thank you so much for taking this extra step. It helps other educators find episodes like this one when they're searching for EdTech tips.